Hey, it's Matt Wenning at WenningStrength.com, and we're here at Riker Automotive with the 2021 Bronco Sasquatch Edition. And I wanted to go over it and talk to you guys, give you guys a perspective from a big, strong lifting guy. Does this truck fit? Is it comfortable? Where are some pluses and minuses? And would I get one personally? So let's get after it.
Flexing ain't discreet about it. Extra read about it. Say you wanna beef about it. We gon' come and see about it. Flexing ain't discreet about it. Extra read about it. Say you wanna beef about it. Find out nothing sweet about it.
So the first thing I've noticed when I get in the 21 Bronco is it's not as big as the Raptor. So I own a Raptor, but what I noticed is that it's actually fits really well. So I'm 6'1", 270 pounds, and I do not have a problem. I wouldn't have a problem driving this every day as far as the width and the size. You can see how much headroom I have. We're talking good 6 more inches of headroom, and I'm 6'1". So if you're a taller or thicker person, this will fit you perfectly. I'm really, really impressed with the steering on the particular vehicle. It feels like it's pretty nimble for being a bigger model of the truck with huge tires. So they've definitely dialed in the steering and everything of that nature. I like the feeling of the materials on the steering wheel and the style of the steering wheel and dash. Obviously, they built this dash and its interior with really, really heavy material that would be super easy to clean if you were actually going to go beat on one of these things, which I really like. One of the negatives I would say, like we're getting on the highway now, and it could be because of the removable top or just because it's a different model, but it's definitely a lot more road noise than a Raptor. I don't know if you can hear it, but it's probably a good 10 or so dB louder as far as road noise is concerned in the Bronco than it is the Raptor. So if you're doing a lot of highway driving, and you're going to spend the same rough amount of money when these all settle in and people aren't freaking out you can't get them right now, if you're doing a lot of highway driving and you still want that off-road look and you have the money, I would go to the Raptor for the highway driving, just based on the road noise. One of the other factors that I think Ford probably could have done a better job at was trying to figure out the gas mileage. So this, no joke, gets the same gas mileage as my Raptor with half of the horsepower. And I'm sure that's not an exact amount, but when you touch the Raptor, it's get up and go. And when you're cruising the Bronco, you can definitely tell it doesn't have a lot of sport performance power as far as like street driving. So if you want something that still has a little bit of a sports car feel, again, you're probably going to have to go to the Raptor. But for what it is, the Bronco, it's totally doable as far as power is concerned. It's got enough to do what you want it to do, but I would say it's more suited for street driving versus highway power and speed, and it's still only averaging the exact same gas mileage as the Raptor. So if gas mileage is a concern, the Sasquatch package with the 35s and the better gear ratio for off-road is probably not going to be for you. Now, if you're in the city and you're just driving back and forth to work 5 or 10 minutes a day, probably not a big deal. But if you're like me and commute 25-30 minutes one way to go to work, the Bronco is there's definitely going to be a measuring stick on gas mileage. Now, is the gas mileage better in a Jeep than a Bronco? Probably not. So it's just the nature of the beast when you got one of these types of cars. You're probably not going to have the gas mileage, but with 35-inch tires and all that other stuff, you're probably not going to get the gas mileage no matter what engine you run. So if gas mileage is a concern, then the Bronco is probably going to be a little bit of a reach for you as far as it gets 17 miles a gallon in the city and 17 miles a gallon on the highway. The next thing that I like about the inside of the Bronco, other than obviously the number one thing for me is the room, is the fact you have dual climate control, all of the buttons. You can look at, your front camera view. It tells me what's going on in the front and what's going on the sides. I mean, that's just awesome. You have park assist. You can shut off the on and off engine, which I thought was ironic because in the Raptor, they took away when you stop, the engine no longer shuts off on the Raptor. This still does. because of video purposes, we won't turn it up, but I thought that the radio in this particular package was really good. Where they place the speakers, how well they play, and how loud they are is pretty impressive for the factory. So this is probably the premium package as far as the stereos are concerned, and I turned it all the way up just to get an idea if it was any good, and I was impressed. It actually is pretty loud and sounds pretty good. The gauges are very similar to my 21 Raptor. As far as the head unit, I really like the gauge readouts on the dash and the adjustability of it to find out not only what the car's doing engine wise, but also drivetrain wise, all those other factors. It's pretty good readout. Tells you the temperature outside, gives you RPM ranges, fuel gauge obviously, but it's pretty cool. It's laid out really well. I'm pretty impressed with the electronics in it. Now, what I find ironic is all of this stuff is built to be washed, and you got these rubber-coated buttons, so that way you don't have that. But the dash itself is not waterproof, so if you were really going to go take one of these out and bury the hell out of it in a pond, you would have to be very careful to not have the water up this high, which obviously you'd be stuck anyway. But it's kind of odd that you would make all this very off-roady and then your dash is still not waterproof. So for you guys that really go out and beat on these things, that would be something you'd have to be very careful with. But again, that's probably 3.5 feet of water, so you're already in trouble anyway. But building the interior, they did a pretty good job. The stitching's nice, the leather's nice on the seats. It feels like they used a grade of leather that's going to last a long time and take a pretty good beating. So if you have kids or pets, this leather looks like it's going to take way more abuse than another vehicle, especially the Raptor. I feel like the seats in this, the material grade is much more stout than the Raptor as far as cleanability and durability. But again, if you're doing a lot of highway driving like I do, the one big downside to the Bronco is going to be the road noise. So the next thing is we'll get to the cool stuff. So Riker has a small off-road course. We're actually going to take the Bronco off on it and show you all the buttons and kind of what they do, which is pretty cool, especially if you're not an avid off-roader and don't really understand where to put your settings in your truck. You have a GOAT dial that will basically put it in modes that best suit the type of driving you're going to do, which I think is super badass, especially for people, like I said, that don't have a lot of off-road understanding. You can put the transmission and the engine and all of that stuff, especially even the way the gas pedals react, in these different modes to give you better responsiveness in sand, rock crawling, and all kinds of stuff. So they really did their homework on giving the average person a nice chunk of an off-road feel and an ability to do some pretty impressive things with a vehicle with very little off-road experience. All right, so if you're an avid off-road person, the big thing you can do is toy around with the buttons up here. The buttons up here, we have the top left button. This one can actually shut off the sway bars to allow the axles and everything to acryliate over heavy bumps, which is going to be good if you're crawling over any kind of rocks or you're in a really rough trail that has a lot of pits and ruts in it. The next one are the differential lockers. The differential lockers will lock the front wheels or the back wheels into 100% drive. Now, a normal four-wheel drive vehicle, when you put it in, say, 4 high or 4 low, doesn't necessarily mean you have four-wheel drive. You have front left, back right, or vice versa turning. And the reason that they do that is because it will still allow you to move and turn the vehicle. When you put stuff into front and rear diff locks, it wants to hop and bounce and not turn. That's great for traction, but not so much if you're on a regular road, so a lot of companies will not do that. This is pretty cool, and what I really like about the Bronco is it simplifies everything about off-road. So with this big dial here, I can switch over and it will tell me which mode I'm in and where, so I can go into slippery mode, mud and ruts, and it actually puts the four-wheel drive system, as you can see here, it locks the rear diff and it puts it into 4 high for me based on the fact that it thinks that's going to be the best situation for your mud and rut situation, okay? Then we go to the next situation in sand. So now it's going to lock the rear diff, and it's going to keep me in 4 high, and it shows in here where the power distribution is going and how it's going to adjust itself. So what we're going to do is put it in Baja mode, which is basically crawling anything, rocks, all kinds of stuff, and that basically allows me to have a real four-wheel drive system, and do basically whatever I want to do or go over whatever I want to go over. So I think this is pretty neat. We can also go to one other one, which is rock crawl. That's going to put the differential into where top speed on this is going to be maybe 10 miles an hour, but it could literally crawl up anything as long as the frame's not stuck. So let's go over, we have this little course at Reichert that they used to build for the Raptors. Let's see how well the Bronco goes over everything.
Flexing ain't discreet about it. Extra, extra, read about it. Say you wanna beef about it. We gon' come and see about it. Flexing ain't discreet about it. Extra, extra, read about it. Say you wanna beef about it. Find out nothing sweet about it. Flexing ain't discreet about it. Extra, extra, read about it. Say you wanna beef about it. We gon' come and see about it. Flexing ain't discreet about it. Extra, extra, read about it. Say you wanna beef about it. Find out nothing sweet about it. Look, mile like 3-6 pulled up, ski trip cold winter. All my eating good, I remember when we had.
All right, so in the 2021 Bronco, instead the Raptor opted for, they use Fox style shocks. They went with Bilsteins on the Bronco, but they're still insanely high quality. You can see that one of the big changes to the Bronco versus the Jeep is they went to independent front suspension. So that's very similar to the Raptor. Helps with ride, cornering ability, and all. The off-road, I would say, would be a trade-off. If you had this style for full-blown rock crawling, I'd say that the Jeep Dana 40 front axles would be better, just based on the fact they can take an ass whooping from a rock a lot more than this stuff can. But for everyday driving, normal trail riding, and even some rock crawling, this will be totally fine. And actually, for what most people is going to do with the Bronco, I would really have this suspension set up anyway. You can see all of the skid plate package. I mean, this is all protected here. You got all of this coming here and protected, and it's actually even welded in. So a lot of these skid plates are actually welded in to protect everything, which is pretty badass. They went with a 5-link rear suspension, similar to the Raptor. So as you can see here, you have these huge rods that can protect here. You got your cross link here. All of this is going to not only help with ride, but also usability off-road, making this thing not only have great ground clearance, but a decent ride for what it is. So overall, the underneath of this is pretty heavy duty. It's pretty well protected. The frame looks insanely strong. Everything is built really, really well. I'm impressed with Ford Motor Company. I mean, these are insanely fat. You got your rock guards here on the sides to protect the body from any kind of getting hit with anything when you're crawling over stuff. The electronics are well tucked. Transfer case looks pretty beefy for the size of vehicle that it is. Yeah, overall it's very, very well built, but I'm glad they went with the Bilstein shocks, the independent front suspension, all of the skid plates. Everything makes this 2021 Bronco definitely worth its weight, and it looks strong enough to really go and take an ass whooping off-road. So that's our review for the 2021 Raptor. We hope you liked it. I sure enjoyed driving it for the weekend. And like I said, if you're looking for something really short that's easy to whip in and out of parking garages and stuff, this would be the ultimate car or small truck SUV to have in town, based on the fact that it's easy to park, it's easy to maneuver, it still has a ton of off-road capability. You're not getting stuck in the snow and anywhere you go in this thing. It's solid. Now, if you want something that rides a little better and you want something that's a little quicker and has a little bit less road noise, then I would opt to go to the Raptor. And right now, at the price points that these are at, the Raptors and the Broncos are not really much different in price. So I would opt to go with the Raptor if I was looking for more luxury and quietness. But if you're looking for off-road capability and ease of turning and real trail riding, the two-door, shorter wheelbase Sasquatch Bronco is definitely the way to go.
Flexing ain't discreet about it. Extra, extra, read about it. Say you wanna beef about it. We gon' come and see about it. Flexing ain't discreet about it. Extra, extra, read about it.